and only 13,000 have been assigned to audits. And of those 13,000, only 5,000 are assigned to individual audits. So, you know, think about it. Your chances of being audited are pretty slim. But the IRS does have what we call a data mining program, and a lot of information that has been brought to the attention of the IRS from the 38,000 people that came forward under the various voluntary disclosure programs, including the names of bankers, lawyers, accountants, investment managers, consultants, whoever helped an American set up a foreign bank account, their names, that's part of those voluntary disclosure programs. You must give the IRS all of this information. Who were the bankers that you met? How did you send money abroad? I mean, all of this information, they want the detail. And it was as a result of that detail that the IRS went after 11 banks and subpoenaed 11 Swiss banks and one trust company, Credit Suisse, Julius Baer, Bank Leumi, they went through Bank Leumi first in Switzerland, Mizrahi in Switzerland, Discount Bank in Switzerland, and then they had quite a few, Wegelin, tons of banks in Switzerland. I can't think of all the names. Anyway, it was as a result of that data mining program and the information that they gained from all of the Americans who came forward. And these were mainly Americans in the United States, not necessarily all from Americans living abroad. More Americans living in the United States came forward. Now you gotta remember, guys, do you know how many people immigrate to the United States? Tons. A lot of people immigrate, and especially after World War II. A lot of the people that we helped in the United States who had failed to report their offshore accounts and stuff, a lot of them were as a result of World War II. So we had an awful lot of Jewish people who went to the United States, and they left their money in Switzerland. A lot of reparation was paid to them, you know, when I guess it was back in the 80s or 90s that the Swiss government, the Swiss banks finally made a settlement with the families, the Jewish families and stuff, and so a lot of money was put into the accounts then. That money they never touched. They left it there. You know, they do not want their family or their kids or their relatives or anybody to go through what they went through. So they had a safety net. They weren't the only people who did that. The same thing, we had an awful lot of people who fled Iran when Khomeini came in. Tons. So a lot of people still flee and come to the United States. And an immigration attorney does not sit there and tell them tax law, okay? All they want to do is get paid for helping them get their green card or getting them into the United States. And most people, you know, even in the United States, this is not something you learn in grade school or high school or even college, unless you take tax classes. You know, you just kind of learn it over time. I gotta go. Sorry.
Thanks very much, Darlene. I have a question more on the pension that you were discussing earlier.
Yes.
I worked with the UN for 33 years,
yes.
And I decided to reside now in Italy.
Uh-huh.
And according to the US tax law, anyone working for the United Nations is considered to be self-employed, which of course it's I
understand.
Yeah. That's a definition. Anyhow. The fact there is actually a treaty between the United States government and Italy. Mm-hmm. Italy does not recognize, doesn't tax individuals on their UN pension.
You know, okay. A lot of the treaties discuss money coming out of a pension.
Right.
The treaties very rarely discuss money going into a pension. Okay? And you're right, and you have certain pension, and this is very, very treaty specific. You know, the laws with regards to pensions for people living in France are different than the laws for people living in England. And the ones in England just got a bit of a break, and the same thing in Canada, the same thing in Switzerland. It's so
That's
specific.
not my question.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is that the fact is that I filed my tax on return 2010,
mm-hmm.
and of course I have chosen the option to take a 1/3 lump sum.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, that increased my tax base by
mm-hmm.
US definition significantly. But according to the treaty between Italy and the United States, I am not to be taxed on that pension. And now I have a struggle with the IRS trying to deal with this issue.
a lot of IRS agents aren't aware of the treaties, or they don't read all the treaties.
Exactly.
So you have to actually, when you negotiate or discuss things with the agent, you have to say, okay, and be very nice. Don't be condescending at all, because they do have the power of the pen. So you send them a copy of the treaty. And you say, okay, listen, Article so-and-so, Article so-and-so, and this is my case. Please define why you feel I should be paying tax. Now, you have to be honest with you. You did not take your pension as an annuity. And when you look at the treaty, the words in the treaty, are they talking about lump sum? Or are they talking about...
They're using the word lump sum, and you're not taxed on your pension.
Okay. But
if you reside in Italy.
Okay.
If you get an annual...
I'd have to look at it, because I am not familiar with the Italian treaty.
Maybe we can talk about that later, but I think it's...
Sure. It's something... Not all IRS agents are familiar with all sections and all treaties. And they will have no problem backing down once you actually show them in, the treaty, the articles. Because they then pop it up to the next level, and it goes up to the next level, and it finally gets to an attorney who will actually look at it and say, oh yeah, right, this taxpayer is correct, But it takes a while.
And can I add one thing?
Sure.
At the bottom of that slide is the National Taxpayer Advocate. I've met with her once. I met with her senior attorney counsels when I was there last time. That's what Nina Olson is there for, and that's what her attorneys are there for. If you find yourself really unable to explain something to an IRS person, the National Taxpayer Advocate is there to advocate for you. So I can give you that, address as well.
And they're quite good. They're very good. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I will let you get on with things. Thank you.
Are you going to disappear, or are you still going to stay with us until the end of the session?
I'll stay with you too.
Okay, great. Because then if other questions come up for Darlene, she can answer them as we're going along. Okay. So we're going to Treasury. This part of Overseas Americans Week was meeting with Taxpayer Advocate Service, but in April and November of last year, I was invited to represent FAWCO along with people representing Arrow and ACA in meetings that were absolutely unprecedented. You've read about it perhaps in the FAWCO forum, so I'm not going to go over it again. But this has never happened before. The Treasury and the IRS actually said, okay, we're going to sit down with you people and we're going to listen to your stories. And I've learned this term gender lens and gender mainstreaming and so on this week, which is now really becoming part of my language. I was the gender lens, as I said the other day, in the group talking to Treasury. I was the one representing all of these women who are being taken off their joint accounts with their husbands and finding themselves with no financial independence abroad. People who are losing business partnerships abroad. You have a little bakery with a German partner, and the German partner all of a sudden says, I don't see why you should be reporting this to the IRS. I'm German, our business is German, we're perfectly legal. I'll find myself a German partner. I don't need an American partner. And it's particularly the stories, as I said the other day, that she shouldn't have done that. The women's stories have been very poignant and very telling for Treasury. So I do think that things are happening. There's this new non-discrimination clause. We're not even going to go there because, as Darlene and I were saying the other day, they say there's a non-discrimination clause. In other words, a bank can't be considered compliant with FATCA legislation. FATCA is the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. Don't worry about it, just, but it won't be considered FATCA compliant if it is refusing bank accounts to Americans in that country. Well, this depends on the country, we learn. It doesn't apply to the first one that was signed in the first place with the UK. One was just recently signed with Switzerland, and it's not there, I gather. Darlene knows more about this than I, but it's there. What I think is important, nonetheless, to remember is that it's there. Treasury is making an effort to recognize the special situation of perfectly legal, law-abiding people who live outside the United States and have to have bank accounts and have to have, you know, foreign income and so on. They're recognizing that we're not all tax evaders. So it's going to take them a little while to figure out how to deal with this special situation, but they're trying.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to bring to your attention one more thing. This piece of FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, this piece of legislation is the biggest piece of legislation. It is turning the entire U.S. tax code on its head, okay? It is turning the entire banking and financial industry and how it operates and how it just does daily business on its head. And a lot of the banks, you know, okay, they've all been afraid because they've all had, at least in Switzerland and a lot of other countries, it's not just Switzerland, guys, it's every country out there. A lot of the banks did not pay much attention to who was reporting and who wasn't reporting. They didn't have to, they didn't need to. And so when people gave them their, you know, let's just put it this way. In 2000, when the US government instituted legislation under the Unified Credit Act, they tried, not Unified Credit, the QI, Qualified Intermediary Legislation. At that point in time, all of these foreign banks who decided to sign up as qualified intermediaries and be friendly with the United States basically sold all the US stocks and bonds for their entire client base because they didn't have to report anything foreign to the IRS. They only had to report US stocks and bonds. So the IRS realized that 3-4 years, you know, into the QI program, and that's why FATCA came up. They said, okay, we need to close these holes, you know, under this piece of new legislation so that they are reporting not just, you know, the US stocks and bonds, but the foreign stocks and bonds. But in taking this FATCA forward, I have to be honest with you, Switzerland is kind of leading the pack, and it's mainly because the Swiss banks have been hammered for the last 4 years. And they are not, they're going one step further than what the IRS is requesting. They are asking every single one of their clients to sign off. First of all, they're asking someone like us to sign on a dotted line, a third party, that says, yes, this account has in fact been reported on a tax return and on an FBAR to the federal government. And I, Darlene Hart, certify that we did prepare these returns and did this for the client. Okay, I don't have to certify that the guy filed it and actually mailed it to the IRS, but I do have to certify that I did prepare it and that it was reported. The next step, they come back and they say, okay, now we want every single one of the Americans to agree to the fact that your information will be sent on a 1099 to the US government. Okay? So it's not just certifying that the account has been reported and the income from that account has been reported, but it's also the fact that I'm going to do a 1099 to the US government to say, yes, this person has this account in the United States, abroad, to the federal government. So they're taking it beyond what is necessarily required because they don't want the risk anymore. They do not want to have to deal with this issue. And let's face it, most of these banks, their American clientele is maybe 1 or 2% of their total client base. You know, and the cost, you know, they've had huge costs just to deal with their Americans, which is why they're closing a lot of doors.
No, that's fine. So when we met with Treasury, I just wanted to say that these were our main recommendations to Treasury. I can't guarantee you that anything will be really listened to, but these were our recommendations. That they set up an advisory council similar to this bipartisan commission that is called for in 597. That they set up an advisory council between Treasury, IRS, and overseas organizations. Now I have to say that looks to us like something that may happen. Doesn't mean that I or you specifically or, you know, individual person is going to be on that commission, but it looks to us as if they think it's a good idea because so much of this is new to everybody and they realize, as I said a minute ago, that we're a special situation that they forgot to take into account and they need input from abroad. So it looks to us as if that may happen. You will certainly know. We also had what we think is a really good idea. Why don't you just redefine the word foreign? In other words, if I live in France. If I have an account in Luxembourg, that is a foreign account. If I have an account in the United States, it's an American account, I'm an American citizen, so that's one thing. If I have an account in France, it is not a foreign account. I have to have that to pay my taxes, for my clients to be able to pay me, and so on and so on. That's not a foreign account. Do you realize the problems that that would solve? Just that one thing. So I don't know whether that's going to happen either, but we just think that's brilliant.
Yeah. Would we declaring our own state do that too? Because we're essentially being taxed without any representation, and that's what the United States broke away from England for.
Yeah.
So what do you
That's
say?
radical, but it's just a comment I wanted to make.
What, that we would become a state abroad?
Great idea.
We'll make you the senator, and I'll be the congressman from Bordeaux.
Aren't we supposed to be all part of that?
We've also asked them to raise the reporting threshold for the FBAR. The FBAR was created years and years and years and years ago, and before a lot of people in this room were born. And originally the reporting threshold was $5,000 aggregate in all of your accounts, and that was raised to $10,000, and then it stayed there. And it's still $10,000, which is absurd. Every single person in this room should be reporting, should be sending in an FBAR, because we perfectly well know that you can't live anywhere without an aggregate of $10,000 on one